Hey, welcome in. So glad that you've joined us for another broadcast from Beyond Hiawatha. The miracle lives on. We have so enjoyed getting the opportunity to talk with a number of people who have been part of Hiawatha staff, campers at Hiawatha, also program from Hiawatha. And today, I've got a couple of special guests that are unique in the Hiawatha lore, so to speak, for a number of reasons. Number one, they were campers, they were staff, they were executive staff. They've had kids at camp, they've had kids on the lake. They've been part of the program at Hiawatha. But the other thing about these two young men is they were awfully young when Dad decided, we need some extra guys at Hiawatha, and I've got a couple in my church that would fit the bill. And nobody was going to tell the age of these two guys because they were just heading into their teenage years when they joined the Hiawatha staff. But it's a privilege to have Mr. Brian Slocum and Mr. Jared Rod joining us for this Hiawatha podcast. Guys, welcome in and thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having us, Billy.
Yeah, it is indeed a privilege, guys, and our relationship, just for anybody that's tuning in, goes back an awfully long ways. And I have known you both for a very lengthy amount of time, and Brian since he was basically born, and Jared for just about that long. And so yeah, we've got a lot of history, and actually, there's enough history that we could take a lot longer on this podcast than what time allots for. But I did want to just to give you guys a chance to share a little bit of maybe your earliest memory of hitting the grounds of Hiawatha Youth Camp, and I'm presuming that would have been as campers, but I'm not totally sure. I must admit we were talking about a mutual friend, Randy, and when I asked him that question, and he surprised me with his answer of going up with his dad on a bus. I had no idea that even happened. So, not sure what your earliest memory is, but Brian, what do you recall as far as first time getting to Hiawatha? And then Jared, you go ahead and follow.
Yeah, as Jared and I were talking about doing this, we're like, I'm not sure how much we remember from back then. And so I don't know what my first time actually was, but it could have been earlier than what I recall for sure. Because my grandpa Moore went up to Piot Lake as part of like Piot Lake Bible Conference days with your grandfather, Billy.
Oh,
And then my parents were on staff, what, in the early 70s, I'm guessing,
yep.
before they got married. And then I know that my mom would go up there with like Donna Krieger and do nurse stuff. And so I probably went along with them at some point in time, even before I was a junior camper, which would have been sometime in the mid 80s, I guess. But the first time I really remember, and this ties over to Jared a bit, was probably like 1989-ish kind of thing. I was a camper, and somehow or another, we figured out I could stay for 2 weeks in a row.
Mm.
And so that was like, we just wanted to be at camp as much as possible. And somehow we worked it out. I don't know if it was the teen week going into blue light week or what, but and Jared might remember better is exactly when we first met each other. It might have been the year before that, but what I remember is we certainly knew each other that year in '89 because when we stayed over, Jared's brother Steve somehow was finagled into agreeing to babysit us for the day, and he took us in the black van that they used to collect for trash. And I'm pretty sure we went to Trout Lake and did our
Oh,
laundry. I don't know what else we did that day, but I know he probably preferred to spend his day with many other people other than the two of us on that Saturday, but somehow he was nice enough to do that. So I
yeah.
remember that, and it had to have been in 1989.
Okay. Jared?
Yeah, I remember that day. I remember that van and the gas pedal was a foot. I think we came back and he took us on the boat all day. At least I think that's what we did.
Yeah. Yeah, because your
My
brother was the WSI for a
yeah, yeah. He was
decent amount of time.
he was the prettier one in the lifeguard and all that. So my first memory, I was thinking about it when you sent the questions. It was either 80 or 81, and my sister Kim was on staff.
Mm.
And I remember the banner on the back of the stage, and it was either 80 or 81. I think it was 81. And I remember your dad, I think he was in a white suit coat with a red tie.
Mm.
And I thought I was well, 81, I was 4 or 5, and I thought he was Billy Graham. In my mind, Billy Sr. was Billy Graham.
Yeah.
And for the whole time, I had no idea, but that's my very first memory. And then of course, spending time as a camper, I was the eternal camper. I think I spent my last summer as a camper 3 or 4 weeks up there. So
As a camper.
um, I went from the junior camper staff or teen camp, and then the next year we were on staff. But I don't think the last year, I don't think because we started in 90. I don't think Brian went to junior camp in 89. I think that was just me because I was up there, my brother with my
Yeah.
brother. And so
Yeah. Yeah. So before your brother was the WSI, your sister was
my
it.
sister was, yep.
Yeah. Um, what were you going to add, Bry?
I just remember when Jared and I were up there, it seemed like we were like the kings of the camp. And all the older staff girls were really nice to us and everything. And I think we thought like we're really cool. And these old staff girls, like I'm trying to remember. There was one of the girls at least that was dating Steve at the time, or maybe she was later in the year or whatever. But now being older, what I realize is they're just being nice to us because they all probably wanted to date Jared's brother. That was
There
really
you
what
go.
it was.
Yeah. They, they thought that was the way in to Steve's heart was through his kid brother.
Like I said, he was the pretty one. So
Yeah. Yeah.
all the I got the size, he got the looks.
Oh, there you go. Well, so early on, yeah, you guys didn't have much opportunity to be campers. That's for sure. Because I am not sure exactly what was going on that summer, but I just know that Dad was under the gun as far as needing some guys to help out around the grounds. And so he nabbed the two of you. Um, at a young age and just said, "Hey, how about it?" And you both kind of accepted. And I'm just wondering what were your thoughts when that invite came? And was it a tug of war with your parents at all? Were they a little skeptical about you heading up there at that stage and serving, or were they all on board?
I
To remember
remember, go ahead.
yeah, I feel like they were all good with it because they knew where we were going. I remember having to pack up and everything quite late in the game and quite quickly. I don't know why I remember this blue trunk. You just threw everything in, and I remember having to go to like DJ's or merry-go-round or some mall and store in the mall and buy like some colorful kind of suit with a rayon shirt underneath. It was back in those days where all the suits were like looked like primary colors or whatever because we had to wear a suit, for Saturday night and all that. So that's what I remember being the bigger deal is like having to get everything thrown together to get up there. But nothing. Yeah, I was kind of like, sure, if Billy thinks we can do this, then in my mind it's like, I guess we can do this. Either that or we felt probably a little too highly of ourselves, maybe being 13 and 14.
Well, you need an ounce of confidence at that stage to be able to head up there because it was a lengthy summer series at that point in time too. You were heading up there basically at the end of June, and you weren't going to get back until pretty close to school starting the next year. But Jared, what do you recall of that time?
I remember, actually, I hadn't remembered how late it was that we were told, and scrambling to get everything ready. That summer, I didn't get to go to DJs and a TiVo. I got to wear my brother's hand-me-downs from last summer. So it wasn't until the next summer that I got a couple new shoots and all that. And I
Okay.
remember being in our house in Romulus, and my mom told me, and so excited. And like Brian said, maybe it was confidence. Maybe I just didn't have any idea of what I was getting into as a 13-year-old. And I just remember being unbelievably excited.
Huh.
And yeah, I was ready to go. And yeah, I just remember being really, really excited and happy and
Yeah.
kind of starstruck probably because, you look up at all the old staff members that were there and always wanting to be on staff. And so,
Yeah. Yeah, and you guys knew again because of your family affiliation for both of you. You guys knew staff members and people that had already served and that kind of thing too. So that definitely gave you a bit of an in. But also, it sounds like, and I kind of remember this, but the invitations came kind of late in the game. Um, as he was realizing where things were shaking out staff wise, and so that invite didn't necessarily come early on so that you could plan, but was basically about a week or so before campus to begin. And hey, how would you guys like to be up here? So it does hasten your preparation time and maybe not give you enough time to actually think it through.
yeah, I had forgotten that till Brian told me, but I remember that I had a turquoise trunk and I remember just throwing everything in there and heading up.
Yeah.
I think we took a bus that first year. Me, you, and Tom Mann rode the bus up, if I
Oh
remember
my
correctly.
goodness.
I'm almost positive.
Wow. Who were you guys in with? Do you remember counselor that you guys would have stayed with your first year?
I think I was Alan Arney.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I think
For
Alan
me, I
and
was
maybe. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
yeah, I was with Dan Stat, and he'll text me if I'm wrong about that. And I'm 99% sure it was with Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was Alan.
Okay. Okay. And you probably at that stage of the game, I'm pretty sure there wasn't a job on the grounds that you guys didn't participate in, kitchen, miracle building, all that good kind of thing. Especially the first year, it was probably mowing a lot of grass and washing a lot of dishes.
I remember the building. I was in the building, I think, most of the summer. And if you got the opportunity to be in the kitchen because you got your free time, that was like the desirable job. But I think I was stuck
Yeah.
in the building or cutting grass most of the year. Um, and that
Yeah, I
was
think
All right.
building guy had to stay on the grounds on Saturday sometimes. And so that was the worst.
Yes. Yeah.
I think my mom must have gotten to your dad and said something about, well, Brian might have allergies, so I might have avoided cutting a lot of grass because of that. But I definitely remember washing a lot of dishes. It might not have been the first year because I don't think Weston Weiler was up there, but so it might have been the second or third year when Weston was on staff with me. We were the mad men in the kitchen. I can remember washing like plates and dishes for like 200 people after a Sunday dinner, and we're just
Yeah.
back there like we're the madmen washing dishes. But the biggest thing I remember was working in the building. And again, I don't know if this was the first or second year, but and it's one of these things that had big impact on my life even since then. But I was in the building. I don't know. We were making what, 10, 15 bucks a week or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember your dad like basically giving us instruction. There was a list like in the janitor's closet of all the things you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it,
Yep.
straighten every single hymnal in the auditorium, vacuum the lobby like you're basically making lines where you're, like somebody would do like making a lawn look real nice, at Comerica Park or something.
Yep.
That's how you vacuum every inch of this lobby. And I'm like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do, so I'll do it. So a week, and I was in the building with Randy, and towards the end of the week, your dad calls us into the office. Well, me and Randy, and we're like, oh my goodness, we're in trouble. I don't know what we did. We must have done something wrong. And so he comes and sits us down. He's like, just want to let you guys know, me and Randy, that you guys are doing an excellent job. And here's how I know. I put 2 pennies in the corner of the staff office. And you guys have done such a good job cleaning this building that you found those pennies and you even picked those up kind of in the corner behind the door. And he gave us an extra, I don't know, it was $15 or something like this for doing a good job.
We're finding 2 pennies.
Yeah, I was like, but to me, it was like, it just showed like the level of detail and excellence that he, cared for and
Yep.
kind of like put that into us and to me, which has kind of carried along even in my life of knowing like, all right, this is what's expected. Even when the director's not watching, I'm going to do the job like I'm supposed to do it. And him knowing that and having a way to know it, That was a big deal to a 14, 15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember that story.
He did that often, actually. He'd put stuff somewhere, seeing if the building guy would find it and take care of it. And he'd also have those meetings if they didn't take care of it too. So,
My work ethic kicked in a couple years later, so I never got that $15 bonus. I got it done, but I might not have found the penny.
yeah, yeah, I believe it. I believe it. How long before you guys would have been captains?
First year.
Really?
Yes. I was scared to death.
Well,
Yeah.
hopefully you had a veteran then
I
for
think
your
Liz Edwards, I believe, was my first co-captain.
co-captain.
I
Okay.
think. But it was our first year because I'm like, there's no way they're going to ask us to be captains with 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. And sure enough, they called our name. I'm like, oh my goodness. I was petrified.
So I feel like I remember my first team name was Brian's Bombers. And then I don't know if you were the Hot Rods or Jared's Jaguars or something. I don't remember what.
Those
But
were
and I remember that part too, where I feel like,
So
yeah,
you went against each other.
every
yeah,
year.
and yeah. And they paired us up with, like, you're right, with like Liz Edwards, maybe a Kathy Berquist, somebody
Yeah.
like somebody that obviously was a little bit more mature than we were.
Had a little more experience, right? Yeah, yeah. Help you through.
We,
All right, all right. So, Jared, who won that first year?
I don't remember who won. What I do remember is Brian beat me every time but once. I do
Uh-oh.
remember
Okay. Okay.
that.
All right. Well,
I'll
that's
take it.
yeah, he'll take the win.
He was a better leader than me, I guess.
Yeah, you know, it usually came down to verses actually. Almost so many of those weeks. How many verses were kids going to memorize? And
At least in the Lone Camper 2, it was, well, Jared's Jerk was the team name in the Lone Camper 2 movie, and he won because of verses learned by Camper Dan. It's a
That's
quote from
right.
the movie by your dad. So if
I
you want to
remember
watch
that
it, I still have my copy.
you caught
Joel
my headphones on that one. Uh,
Joel Sisson was on my team. I believe it was our first year, and he's 4 or 5 years older than me. And so, again, I'm 13. He was my preacher. That's the only thing I remember about that first year.
okay.
At least
I
I think that was
recall
the
that.
first year.
I think Joel, if I recall correctly, Joel walked up there in a suit coat and a white bow tie.
I don't remember the bow tie, but he was dressed to the nines, and
Yeah,
he knocked it out of the
that was
park.
Joel Sisson. I remember that for sure. That one stands out. I had to, of course, for a number of years, sit behind all of those participants in talent night, while the two of you were usually out somewhere in the middle of the audience trying to get everyone to laugh at one point or another. But I also recall, and this is going totally off subject or off anything we talked about previously, but when we taped that Lone Camper 2, Dan gets up and sings some song or something, and then Brian goes to the piano, and they had a Michael W. Smith,
That's right. I remember.
and Brian is parroting this as Michael W. Smith plays. It's like, where'd this guy come from? I still recall that. Yep,
Oh,
that was pretty funny. Having the two of you up there along with DJ and Ryan and Brian's brother definitely brought a degree of humor to just about every aspect of Hiawatha that you guys were involved in. It definitely added to the laughter. Um, so as you look back and as you've had a chance, and I know you guys have listened to a few of these episodes, but who are the speakers that still kind of stand out that you had the opportunity to hear? Any of them that wound up kind of being your favorites, or when you'd look at the schedule, you'd see this person's coming and you'd kind of light up because you were looking forward to hearing them.
I always loved when Mark Reed was up there. He was
Mm,
always such a cool guy, down to earth, fun, played
yeah.
softball with us, and I don't think I could tell you any of the messages he ever preached, but I just appreciated he just seemed authentic, at least to me. Remember Terry Prisk? I loved his enthusiasm. He was always just um,
Mm.
very unexcitable, but excited to be sharing what he was sharing. And I think that's one of the messages I remember is um, I don't remember the name of the message, but his emphasis was, if you're not reading your Bible, start with one chapter a day.
Yeah.
And that's even stuck with me, now, and you get in a rut, do something. But I think I remember your dad not appreciating that message. Him saying only one message or one chapter a day. I seem to remember him saying like maybe a little more, but yeah. So those
No,
are, and
that's
then of
good.
course your dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, and we can touch on that in a minute, if any of those messages you recall. But Brian, what about you?
I'm glad Jared went first because Mark Reed was going to be one of mine. I think the people that I remember were the ones that came back multiple times
Sure.
and focused on relationships, like they actually spent time with, sat with the staff, got to know the staff. You'd know they're coming back year after year, and you'd get to know them a little bit better. So, Mark was definitely one of those who almost felt like he was sort of like almost on staff. Then his
Yeah.
kids came for a little bit too.
Yeah.
I have to say Don Loney because literally this past weekend, I used some of Don Loney's messages and things that he would say to talk to my now high school sons about dating. So, and I don't know if I don't know if you're able to repeat them here on this
Probably not.
podcast. So maybe let's leave it at that. But I did the voice and everything, and they looked at me like, "What? This person spoke at camp?" I'm like, "Yeah," and I still remember how there was two ways to date, and we'll just leave it at that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I ended with a loud glory. So he was great for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, you guys were a part of a lot of Tuesday nights and a lot of Thursday nights at Hiawatha. And any of those stick out? Not even necessarily, I mean, it might be a message, it might be an outline, but it also might be just you had the chance on those Tuesday nights to counsel with a lot of guys. And sometimes there were some nights where you just kind of felt like, man alive, this is, a God breathed moment where the Holy Spirit was just so powerful. And man, you could just feel it. And sometimes you get that opportunity. And I just was wondering if any of those nights, messages, whatever the case may be, were something that you still recalled.
I the one message I remember from Tuesday nights was fly in the ointment.
Yeah.
That was the theme of it. And so I think all of them kind of had that, there was some verse and kind of took the theme from it and basically apply it to your life and what you need to work on. I also remember being super nervous like that first summer as to whether or not we'd even be allowed, to counsel anybody on a Tuesday night. But B, like I think we had a bunch of different like, wow, if they want to talk about reading their Bible, like here's some verses, if they want to talk about this or that or whatever. And then we were also trying to be careful, like make sure we don't go up and try to counsel some 17-year-old kid. We don't really. So
Yeah.
I remember being really nervous about that and feeling like, oh, I gotta figure out what in the world am I supposed to say when I'm going through the same things myself. And so the other statement I remember, often being used is kind of like God using somebody who's basically just willing, right, and maybe not even necessarily qualified, whether it be because of our age or because we hadn't necessarily been through experience-wise a lot to share, and just being willing. So
Yeah.
those are some of the things I remember about Tuesdays.
Yeah. Jared?
I remember, just as Brian said, being unbelievably nervous. I was 13, and I probably, if I remember, I just remember not having any idea what I was going to say, even after, trying to prepare yourself, like Brian said, I don't remember exactly what we had, but we had a list of verses, and
Yep.
depending on what the context of the conversation was with the camper, you know, even after having that, being scared to death, and I don't think I was too much involved with Tuesday nights as far as the counseling aspect of my first year. Brian was a little older. Um, I think maybe once, and then the next year it started to, I got a little more comfortable and
Mm-hmm.
started to share more with some of the campers. But what I remember most, one, just, God moving, like you said, a specific message. I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I just remember watching all these kids make these decisions, at a young age, and as I got older and started to understand what was happening a little more, just kind of being in awe of what God was doing. And the second thing I remember is actually you, Billy. You were the one who kind of directed me. I don't know if you remember that or not, but especially that first year, it directed me in the way of, maybe you could talk to him. I think the
Mm-hmm.
first time I talked to someone, there was a really young camper. It was a teen week, but he was really young, and you kind of pointed me in the right direction. And then if there wasn't anybody, I remember you saying, well, maybe not tonight. So you played a big part in that, because your dad was, up on the stage and you were in the back. And that kind of, I remember just that comfort of knowing you were going to kind of help me hold my hand through the process. Because again, at 13, that's my biggest memory, is when we started, I was just petrified.
Yeah.
Not wanting to say the wrong thing, and not wanting to tap a girl camper on the shoulder. And so,
Well, it's pretty hilarious that you bring that up, because that, we used to have at staff meeting before that first Tuesday night, there would always be a bit of counsel given by head counselors and by dad, as to, okay, now we want to do this, remember to do this, and make sure you're doing this. Let the counselors go first. And then he would always give an illustration. Please make sure that when you tap somebody on the shoulder, you wait till they turn around and then kind of guide them. Don't just turn around and walk away, because you want to make sure guys are dealing with guys. And the example that he used was way back in the day when I was on staff, and I was on staff with Brian's uncle, and my good friend Dennis tapped somebody on the shoulder and turned around immediately and just walked to the back, and the person followed him. And only when they sat down did Dennis realize, I have tapped a young lady on the shoulder, and he had to take her back up and have her wait
so
here.
sorry.
So that was the example that was always used year after year. But anyways, yeah, we've and that tradition has continued. It's been awesome the way that God has used that, uh and the longevity of that at Tuesday nights, and the difference they've made in a lot of young people's lives. Um Interestingly enough, you both, again, campers, staff members. Then, Jared, were you the athletic director at some point in time? That was
Brian.
Brian.
Yep.
Okay, that was you. You were the AD. Okay. I wondered about that. And um Jared, did you follow in the footsteps of your siblings and do the waterfront?
It did not.
You did not. Okay.
I later on, I mainly was on grounds. I was the person that did the grounds. I ran everybody to the zoo for the hospital. I think I only ended up counseling one year, one summer.
Yep.
And so yeah, that was my siblings and Brian. So
Okay. Okay. Well, no, Brian was not he was never a
no,
WSI. He just was
athletic director.
80.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um Jonathan, his brother, was the WSI for a summer. Or is that just again a lone camper
That might be
memory?
a lone camper. I don't think Jonathan was ever the WSI.
No, yeah, his son somehow, I'm not sure how he's qualified, but I
Uh,
guess somehow or another he's following in Steve Rod's footsteps, and now he runs the
yeah,
beach
that's
now.
true. He
Jan's
did.
son.
Really?
He did run it this past summer. So
The thing I remember is when I was the athletic director, somehow I was one that didn't have any patience for the campers, especially when they wouldn't listen. So I'd yell at them and everything. So I got the nickname Mr. Bitter somehow.
I forgot about that.
Because I always be like, hey, basically, shut up and we're gonna do whatever the activity is.
I remember that.
That's terrible. Well, interestingly enough, Brian, and I'll lean on you for this one a little bit. You went from being a camper to a staff member to an executive staff member, and then one of the few instances where a person who has had that longevity comes back as a Saturday celebration guest, because you came and sang as part of Crimson Quartet. And I, of course, had a dear friend who had been part of that ministry for a long time. And then he unfortunately passed at a young age. He had also served at Hiawatha on staff. So he's another one of those that went through those ranks. But what was it like to have been at Hiawatha for all of camping, staffing, and now you come back and you're part of a Saturday night? Had to be a little bit of a different experience, but pretty cool at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's what I remember. It was pretty cool to having especially been there so many different years and seeing all the people that probably far deserved to be on that stage more than I did, as far as their their longevity and their expertise and all of that. I was still even pretty young at that point in time, but it was definitely a fun thing to be able to do. And it wasn't too long after I was on staff, because I sang with Crimson from like 1998ish, I feel like, until maybe 2002, 3 time frame sounds right without looking stuff up. But
My goodness.
so it wasn't too long after I'd been on staff, and I feel like I still felt like I could go into the cabin. My brother was probably still up there. That's probably part of the reason. But yeah, cool experience, and definitely the connection through everything is sort of unique, as far as knowing you and singing with Crimson. And frankly, if I hadn't sang with Crimson, maybe I would have never met my wife, because I was introduced to her from Matt Keller being with me, and his wife being friends with her. And who knows where I'd be, if all those things hadn't somehow connected up in some ways. So yeah, when you look back, everything is everything's connected in a way.
It really is. Yeah. And it's kind of cool the way God worked it out. And you've had a couple of kids that have served on staff at Hiawatha as well. And that has maintained that thread of more Slocum generational staff members. So that's been kind of cool.
Yeah. Last summer there was, between nieces and the nephews and son and daughter, there was quite a few Slocums on the ground. So
yeah, that's
cool
true.
thing to see.
Yeah. Kind of, we're taking over the praise team there a couple of times with, it was pretty cool to see. And Jared, you, I'm not sure it's a Hiawatha relationship, but you wound up marrying a young lady that served on the Hiawatha staff as well. And did that romance bloom at all at Hiawatha? I'm trying to remember. I know that's been a minute too.
So we were in the nursery together at Gilead way back. So we knew each other growing up, went to school together. But I would say sort of the spark was ignited at Hiawatha.
Okay.
And then we kind of became friends, and Becky would say it went on for a dozen years, and we finally got married. But yes, the initial spark happened, I would say, at Hiawatha.
Nice.
And kind of where it all got started for us. And eventually I manned up and asked her to marry me. So
there you go. There you go. And the both of you have remained good friends as well down through the years, which is awesome. And you both now find yourself at a stage of life where actually it was hard for us to pull together a date and a time because your kids are, well, not really kids any longer, and they have grown into young men and women that you are now having to figure out how to get to college and graduations and all that good kind of thing. And so it is very awesome the way that God has blessed. Um, and we've like I said, we're already into about 36 minutes of this. And I had a feeling that this one could go on for a while. We could put this into two parts if we wanted. But Brian, I do just want to touch on something that I mentioned to you before we started. And there was camp ministry, not just Hiawatha, but camp ministry as a whole has probably been, at least in the United States, responsible for a lot of young people feeling that tug to go into ministry. And you felt that and actually were a part of that as far as like singing with Crimson and musically, you were helping to lead worship and all that kind of thing. And I remember, again, vaguely, but I just know that there was a season where there was a little bit of, man, what do I do here? Because you had received a significant scholarship to a university that was educating you in one direction. And but at the same time, you kind of had a tug in the ministry direction, and you were definitely trying to figure out what is God's will for my life and what's the path. And you really did, I know, want to follow that. Do you recall that season and how God kind of led in the direction that he did? Because now you find yourself um, you're a vice president at a very well-known company and very uh, very busy, but at the same time, still finding time for ministry wherever you have happened to be. And so, what was it that kind of led you in the direction that you went?
Yeah, it was definitely a struggle. I think I heard Bill Hobson, he was talking to Mark Woodard on one of these, and I was probably similar to Bill, where I was afraid to raise my hand or go forward on Thursday night because then I might end up in the jungle somewhere, similar to what happened to Mark. So I was always trying to figure that out. Even when I went to college, I did music stuff and thought, well, maybe I could go the music route, or do I want to go this more technical engineering route? And it's a big deal and a hard thing to figure out when you're 18, and maybe it's a hard thing to figure out when you're approaching 50 too.
Mm,
Just to like, well, what am I supposed to do next? Kind of, or
yeah.
now. So I think I heard Randy talk about Buddy Green, which is a thing that somehow or another, I think he maybe said to more than one person about this idea of it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's full time. I'm working in a church somewhere. You can do the job you're doing, and that can be your ministry.
Yeah.
And I think that gave me and probably some others, it sounds like Randy for sure, the permission or the freedom to feel like, okay, this doesn't have to be so exclusive one way or the other. That somehow if you're not working in a church or a pastor somewhere, then well, you've let Billy Senior down, and you've let whatever Thursday commitments down that you've made. And so
Yeah.
I think that's the way I kind of figured things out. And like you said, I've had the opportunity to continue singing with, leading worship at my church, and getting to sing with Stephanie, getting to sing with my daughter. I remember even last year before she went away to college. And so, ministry looks different for everybody. And I guess, for me, for Jared, doesn't necessarily have to be full time. There's a lot you can still do, even if you're not a pastor in a church.
Yeah. 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 And Jared, for you, I'm not sure that the struggle was quite as real as it might have been for Brian, but at the same time, you have you have given your life to making sure that wherever God planted you and Becky, you were serving him to the best of your abilities, and you've continued that even as you've raised your children. Um, and so and I'm thinking that maybe a part of that groundwork was laid at Hiawatha to help make sure that that happened, plus
Yep.
some incredible heritage from mom and dad.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just the things that we experienced and learned and saw and were, your dad and you, the examples that were shown to us, and it definitely had a huge impact on the direction of life we could take. And I know you're going to ask about your dad, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, but some of the things that I learned from him, and um, it's I never had I never was at that crossroads where am I going to be in ministry? It never, I guess it never entered my mind. Having said that, I ended up, teaching in a Christian school,
Yeah.
working at a church, not on the ministry side of things, but I was, in charge of the grounds and facilities and two
Same
separate
thing you were doing at
churches, and
Hiawatha.
same thing I was doing in Hiawatha.
Yeah.
And so, it's funny where God takes you, and now I'm still in facilities, but on the secular side of things, and now our ministry is our kids. Becky and I have we entered the world of foster care and adoption,
Hmm.
and that combined with our older three, we're still involved in church heavily, but our involvement in a particular ministry has been pulled back substantially because, and Becky has mentioned in the past, I feel bad we're not involved more. I said our ministry right now is our kids,
Yeah.
foster care and adoption, and that combined with our three older kids has been all consuming for the past. It's been 7 years now,
Hmm.
and we're starting to come out of that a little bit. And you had mentioned earlier our kids, growing and going to college and graduating, and while we have that, too, starting college in the fall, and we also have a 6-year-old, so we're in a unique place. I am almost 50 and exhausted, but and I. There's not a direct link between Hiawatha and foster care and God placing that on Becky and I's heart to get involved, but the things we learned at Hiawatha and to minister to other people and to serve other people and to love other people, and that's there's a direct correlation between the two, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's our ministry now, and it's different, it's unique, as far as you know you being a pastor. I'm not a pastor, but it keeps us busy.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. And it's such a need today too. And so to have two parents like you and Becky that are willing to take that on and take on that responsibility and love those kids in the way that Jesus wants you to, that's just so incredible and important, and uh, makes such a difference. And interestingly, I mean, everyone that we've spoken with so far on the podcast has been someone that's been part of Hiawatha in years past. And there are all of those memories that you can hang on to that you remember. But even as far as like the spiritual depth of being at Hiawatha, you don't necessarily remember every message, every song, every evening service that you were a part of. But I kind of look at it from the standpoint of eating. Um, you're not going to have a hard time looking at me and realizing I have not lacked for food and nourishment in my days. I've had basically 3 meals a day for as long as I can remember. I can't remember all of those meals specifically. I got a few highlights, but I can't remember them all. I just know I've been well fed. And that's kind of the way it is spiritually with Hiawatha. We can't necessarily remember, but it's been a privilege to be under people like the guys that you mentioned, a Mark Reed and Terry Prisk and a Don Loney and so many others. And you may not recall all of the illustrations and messages, but they have built up layers of spiritual foundation upon which the two of you continue to live your life. And that's pretty awesome. And we are at a time where we've got to gotta begin to bring this plane in for a landing. And so I want to ask you two questions. And the first one will be a little more serious than the second one, actually. But the first question would be, is there, as I just talked about the fact that, we can't remember everything, is there something from Hiawatha? Maybe it's a memory, maybe it's a message. It might even be a friendship, but just something of what happened to you decades ago at Hiawatha that you still carry with you to this day. And even though it may not be something that you reflect on all of the time, there is no doubt that it is a part of who you are. And so that would be my question to you as we begin to wrap up. What is something that you learned back then that still carries with you today?
I'll try to go first, and to me, it's back to your dad and some what I was talking about earlier, as far as
Hmm.
the irony to me of things that I can see that have happened later in my life that somehow or another I was like, you know what, I think I can do this.
Hmm.
Because way back when some pastor of mine called me little buddy and invited me to come up to staff when I was only 14 years old and thought I could do it and believed in me. And there's been other opportunities where I've seen where I'm the youngest person in the room. And I'm like, well, I've done this before. I remember when I was on staff with a bunch of people who were 2, 3, 4, 5 years older than me. And
Yeah.
somehow or another, I pretended or figured it out. And so examples like that, and just the things that I learned from your dad, as far as like how to have a group of people who are going to accomplish something, summer of activities that you have, or just getting things ready for the massive concert on Saturday night.
Hmm.
And I've thought about that, where it's like, how in the world did he pay a bunch of people $15 a week and we just would work our butts off to like make something happen?
Yeah.
And then in life, I'm like, okay, well, now I'm supposed to figure out how to motivate a team of people to do something. I get to pay them a salary, right? But I remember spending time trying to figure out how to get a group of people organized around something to up at Hiawatha and get a job done. And I wasn't their boss, but and I learned those kinds of things from your dad, as well as the work ethic, the excellence,
Yeah.
doing everything in certain ways, and why, because it all mattered for this bigger purpose of what was going on that week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so those types of things have stuck with me, and I think or just they've been things I could lean on, even in my work life, as far as things that I learned that at the time I had no idea what I was getting prepared for, but I've been able to use. So that's what comes to my mind.
Yeah, that's awesome. That verse, I think, that was used in the staff manual year after year. It was the way that it finished. Colossians 3:17. Whatever you do in word or deed, do it all to the glory of God. And that was definitely part of the whole camp ethic. Whatever your job is, it's just as important as another job as a counselor. Everything works together to make what happens there happen. So yeah, that's awesome. Jared?
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to say it as well as Brian, but kind of to go on along with what he's saying. Going up there at such a young age, I don't think I know. I didn't really know, um, not what I was getting into, but what an impact Hiawatha had, and what an opportunity it was to be there. Because we had a lot of fun. There's so many funny stories and memories, and but at the same time, like Brian said, we all came together and we got the job done. And I think for the most part, with a few exceptions, we did it pretty well. At least when we were around. Um, and so, but I think probably what I take away, and I think I touched on it when I was talking about my kids, but just learning how to serve others, whether it was the camper that drove you nuts, the
Mm.
staff member you didn't get along with, working together, serving others, and of course, loving others.
Yeah.
And it's it's carried me through life, and helped me to how I conduct myself on a day-to-day basis. And um, it's like you said, I don't remember all the specifics, but just the foundation, I guess, that it started for me at a young age and
Yeah.
carried on through adulthood for the most part. It wasn't always perfect, and I remember I was in the front row. It was your dad was speaking, so I think it was a Thursday night, and he pulled me up to the not the stage, but just below where he spoke. And the illustration was he grabbed my hand and he said, I'm gonna try and pull you up. And he was trying to pull me up on stage, and he couldn't do it, obviously, even if I wasn't a big guy. But he said, "All right, now you pull me down." And I'm like, "What?" I was a little nervous. He wasn't he wasn't a young man, and so he said, pull me down, and I pulled him, and he easily came off the stage, and that's always stuck with me. Who you surround yourself with. It's much easier to be pulled down than to pull someone
Hold
up, and
somebody up. Wow.
and that's
That's
always
great.
stuck with me. And and like I said a second ago, I've not always been on the right side of that on that scenario, but for the most part,
Yeah.
because of that foundation and thank and in the grace of God, I'm
Yeah.
on the right side now,
Oh,
and very
amen.
thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Uh, one more side road here that I just thought of, and then I'll ask you guys a final question. But Brian, and I hope I'm not breaking a confidence here, but you had jotted a note to Bill early on when we started these podcasts and said, "I've listened to the Hiawatha podcast, but I have a hard time getting through any of them without tearing up." Um, and I just was wondering what is the emotion that comes from listening to those voices from the past.
Yeah, I mean, it was the one that Tina Shannon. I'll give her the credit for
Press on.
for getting me. But it
Yeah.
was listening to her and just the memories of things and hearing her voice and hearing her talk about happy
Yeah.
and realizing, kind of like Jared said, the the advantage that we had or the privilege that we had to be there and experience those things
Mm.
and have people that were 5, 6, 7, 8 years older than us that actually gave us the time of day and mentored us and to know that there are people like Doug and Don Rutledge and Mark Woodard and like all these people that we got to spend time with. And that was part of the formation of our life, and the basis of that. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it was that podcast. And then I don't know why I don't have press on somehow on my playlist somewhere, but I'm sitting on an airplane flying somewhere for business. I don't even remember where. And I'm listening to the podcast, and then I hear your dad's voice come on
Yeah.
introducing the song, and it starts playing, and I'm just sitting on this plane crying, and the stewardess actually comes up to me and is like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm just listening to something. So that's what got me. And I suppose any of us,
Yeah.
wherever we're going through something, maybe we play that song and we
Yeah.
might stand a better chance of getting through whatever we're going through.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. All right. I'll ask you a little lighter question. Um, and we'll wrap it up with this. But you close your eyes and you put yourself back, well, unfortunately, a few decades now. But you find yourself on the grounds at Hiawatha. What does the perfect day at Hiawatha Youth Camp consist of for Brian and Jared? I mean, what's the meal that you're having? What's the activity that you are participating in? The morning game, whatever it might be. What's that perfect day that you kind of reflect on as you think back to those years?
Well, I'll bring Tina up again. She mentioned the donuts that Hoppy always made.
Oh, there
I'll
you go.
start
So
with
you're starting out on Thursday.
donuts for breakfast.
Yeah.
I don't always remember what happened on what day. Um, you know, Donuts for breakfast. Morning games, specifically softball. It was always best to play softball,
Yeah.
specifically marathon softball. That was
Oh
our
my
perfect day.
goodness, yes.
So much fun. And then maybe a rainy afternoon nap. Um,
There you go.
there was something about a nap up at Hiawatha when it was raining, and so that would be a good start to my day.
Yeah.
Maybe we see why Jared and I are friends because he picked a few of the things that I'm like, yeah, that would be a good idea. Marathon softball or staff games would be fun too. As long as I could hear your dad saying, Randy, you're playing volleyball. And then, that would make that fun.
I was going to say
Um,
that, but I didn't want to.
Maybe a good roast beef dinner with good
Oh,
mashed potatoes and everything from Hoppy, like the Sunday after or the
Yep.
Sunday dinner menu type of thing. And then I'll throw in there, if we could get the ski nautique back out on Piat Lake and have Jared's brother drive us around and skis
Yeah.
and do whatever. I think that'd be a fun day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, all of that is so good. And on those Sundays, you'd be down in the auditorium trying to listen to the message, but you could smell
smell it.
the kitchen as Mr. and Mrs. Hopper were putting the finishing touches on that roast beef and mashed potatoes and gravy and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, time to wrap this up. We got dinner. And yeah, it's funny because I find myself at this stage of life reflecting on that. And you guys know the history of Hiawatha and some of the challenges that we faced in these past few years. And at times I have found myself um, just feeling forlorn, for lack of a better word, and using an old word, but just so wanting to get back and relive a little bit of that, and but instead, as Brian mentioned, well, actually, as you both mentioned, uh, what an opportunity that we've had, and I must admit I've been able to enjoy that even far more years than you guys. And man, by the grace of God, just so many incredible memories, so many incredible friendships, relationships, messages, musicians, and decisions, and just countless memories that a whole lot of people have not been able to experience. And so it's nothing but the grace of God, and you got to be grateful to Him for that. But at the same time, the ministry of Hiawatha Youth Camp continues on. And so we are excited about the future. Just coming off a summer that was packed with young people again. Each week was sold out. Decisions for Christ, kids getting saved. And it was just an incredible summer of ministry as God continues to move through this place as He has for the past, if you can believe it, 60 years. And so we pray that it continues. And grateful to all of you who are listening in and supporting this podcast. And we'd encourage you to continue to listen. Hit that subscribe button if you don't mind, and you'll get notice every time one of these drops. And we're going to continue to invite guests to be with us. And we're looking forward to upcoming episodes that you're going to not want to miss. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and join in with us. Guys, Brian, Jared, thank you. Thank you. Just it's great to see you both, and great to catch up a bit, and great to hear how God used Hiawatha and continues to use what He did there in your lives today. So thank you very much for joining with us.
Thanks, Billy.
Yeah. And thank you for listening. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. We love you. God bless.